Welcome to Living Mosaic, a project of the Spark of Humanity Network. Living Mosaic is conceived as a conversation around the concept that there is a solution to the causes of the agony, pain, distress, heartbreak that we experience or avoid experiencing that are evident in the world to those of us who have our eyes and our hearts open. And that solution may be seen as a living mosaic in which each one of us has a unique and essential role. So this past year we've been talking about how we might let go of ideas that get in the way of our being drawn into our place in the mosaic, and tools we might use to become more available to the mosaic drawing us toward where we're needed to be. We've realized that coming from the foundation of the Spark of Humanity Network that we have a resource to offer. And that resource is the idea of claiming our spark, that in each one of us there's a spark of humanity, and that as we connect with and our spark, and then through that spark, we connect with and affirm the spark in others, that their spark is strengthened. The spark cannot be extinguished, it cannot be corrupted, it cannot be put out, it can be defended, and often is, it can be baffled, and frequently is, it can be distorted, and in most of us is to some extent, sometimes all three of these. But the strengthened spark seems to erode the defenses, which allows the bafflement to become clarified, which allows us to become aware of our distortions. And because the distortions are painful, because they're contrary to our nature, our inherent nature, our creation, our being, our very being, they're painful. So it allows us to release our distortions, to see what they are, and become willing to release them, however consciously or unconsciously. So one of the members of the network was smart enough to put two and two together, or one and one together, and point out that a way to move into our roles, our places in the mosaic, is by practicing claiming our sparks of humanity. And that practice helps us by the erosion of our defenses and the clarification of our bafflement and the release of our distortions to become more available to the inherent primal attraction of the mosaic and our place in it. So this is the last of the Living Mosaic series, and we'll get on to what this particular shoot is about. But in 2 weeks, we'll be switching over. We'll be, rather than Living Mosaic, which is, I forget my grammar terms. What is living a verb, an adjective? We thought of it originally as an adjective, a living mosaic. But there's also, is it a gerund? I don't think it is. We're living, like we're living our lives. We're living. We've been hoping to live mosaic, but in 2 weeks, thanks to the member of the Spark of Humanity Network who stepped forward and supported this idea, we'll be living spark, which will be about, well, who knows what it'll be about, but it's based on the premise that when we start living from our spark, that we are moved gradually, inexorably toward, at least toward and perhaps into our place in the living mosaic. And that will be hosted by Danielle O'Hallisey, who I can see on my screen, but you may not be able to see on yours. Anyway, she and I will be here together on January 2nd to introduce Living Spark, and I'll be sort of handing the baton onto her, and I'm looking forward to it. And you should be too, or you may be too. You're welcome to. It's a smart thing to choose to spend some time with Danielle. Anyway, so that's 2 weeks from now. What we're talking about today is a surge of hope. And let me start by talking about Xsurge. I'm thinking of it, I think the official title will be Xsurge, because we're not sure what to call that surge or whether we can have a name for it. But it's a surge, if you get the really, 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 really big picture into the astrophysics and geology, the beginning of being, as the sciences have been able to figure it out in this galaxy universe system, that there's a certain nature to it, which is that smaller things get attracted to each other and sort of clump and become something new. They're both still entirely themselves, but yet they're now part of something bigger and newer. We can think of a couple of hydrogen atoms hanging out together, enjoying the air and the sunshine, and saying, oh, there's a good-looking oxygen over there. Let's go check it out. We're water. Who knew? Wow. We're still here, and we're something different, and we're something new, and we're something neither of us has any experience of. So there's that sort of nature to the being in which we're participating as human beings on this beautiful planet. And that movement, and then we begin to see it in the geology, the movement, the formation of this planet, we could say evolutionary, and some of us often say evolutionary. And we see that evolution doesn't work, it is not steady state. It works in surges. And we can see that in the way that biological evolution. And the way we're thinking about it now, as we were looking at the Living Mosaic project, is that consciousness, who knows what consciousness is? Maybe you do, I don't. But that also, there are surges in the development of consciousness. If we look at human history, the little tiny Eurocentric bit of it with which I'm familiar, or maybe you're familiar with more of it, but we see that consciousness seems to surge. There'll be somebody or a movement or a challenge, and then there'll be a paradigm shift, or the 100th monkey will show up, and something new will happen. And it is not, although 100th monkey is an urban myth, I've been informed, but that's the one that the baby monkeys had learned that if they washed off their food in the ocean, that got rid of the sand and it tastes better, so they started doing it, and then the grown-ups picked up. And soon all the little monkeys on that island were washing their food in the ocean to get rid of the sand. And then over on an island across the way, the, quote, 100th monkey showed up, and suddenly all of those monkeys who'd had no physical interactive connection with the ones on the first island, all of them were washing their food and getting rid of the sand. And so that's sort of, when there's this critical mass, consciousness will shift. 100th monkey, I've been told, was an urban myth. It's one I really like, but the principle, I think, is true, even though it may be a myth. But lots of myths have truth in them. So that idea that consciousness shifts, there's enough tension, there's enough something or other so that things shift. And that's why we're using the term, the term surge comes from that line of thought, that we are currently in a surge of, it's related to consciousness, I think, on this planet. It's not located just, in North America, certainly, not just in one area, but it's a global surge of consciousness. And we're somewhere in that. Don't know whether we're at the beginning or the middle or the end, but we're within that. And we can choose to participate in it. We can choose to accept it. And we can choose to adapt to it. There are many people who are upset by this surging action. I'm calling it currently the Xsurge, because X isn't just the letter, not EX, not former surge, but the Xsurge, because it's a mystery. Back in the days when I took algebra, when they taught that in school, I don't know whether they still do, X was the unknown. X was the unknown for which the rest of the equation was solved to figure out what X is. So this is the Xsurge we're talking about, happening now. And it is happening. And if you've been paying attention, as I suggested in the last show, and just let yourself be aware of places where it's sort of like a pot maybe coming to boil, and you see a little movement over here on the surface of the stew or the water or whatever you're looking at. And then you see pop, pop, oh, it's coming to a boil. And I listen to people, and I talk to people, and I read things, and that there's something coming to a boil, something, although that sounds too dangerous, something coming to life, coming into being, some shift in the making. And so that's what I'm attributing to the Xsurge. And many people sort of feel that because the ground under their feet isn't what they were raised with, it isn't what they are comfortable with. And so they are digging in their heels, and they are saying, no, go back to there, or whatever they're saying. And we're not in charge. There's something, there's some power, there's some presence, there's something that we're not in charge of, in case you hadn't noticed. And that is some of us feel very strongly, some of us feel strongly enough, so we're willing to come here and put it out there. Something is moving. Something is slowly but inexorably and sort of gathering momentum, moving. And to become, and over which we have no control. It's going to do it. We can choose to make our experience of it more or less comfortable. We can choose to participate in it in a way which increases the comfort for others. We can choose to sort of snowboard on it if we think of it as an avalanche. We can choose our relationship with it. And it's like an avalanche. We can dig in our heels and it can bury us, or we can choose to move in harmony with it, let it carry us. And it doesn't need to be named, and we won't here now. And that to me gives me hope. Because if everything were up to me, I don't have much hope of me being able to figure things out and know how things should go. But I do have hope in this process. I have hope in the integrity of that which is surging. I have hope in the X. Because in part because I can look back as far as beyond what the Hubble telescope can tell us, or there may be another generation beyond that, to see that, oh, okay, this is the way in this particular cosmos or universe, this is the way things have been working and interacting, becoming something new, continuing on. This is the way it has been. And so chances are, no matter how much I pout and dig in my heels, it will keep on. The underlying laws, the underlying mode of being will continue on. So that means I can be just as miserable as I choose to be, or I can be just as coherent and integrated and explorative. It's an adventure. It's an adventure. I like it. So we can choose that. So an image came to me. I don't know why, but I'll offer it to you. If you've been to San Francisco or heard about San Francisco or seen movies about San Francisco, often it's about the cable cars. And there's something about the cable cars. And the cable cars, there's a cable, I don't know how thick it is, probably at least that thick, underneath the ground where you can't see it. Underneath the ground. And the cable car has something to grab onto that cable, and the cable takes the cable car up hills, down hills, because it's San Francisco. And so we might think of the process of our being drawn into our place within the mosaic as like hooking onto a cable. So what you and I have been talking about this past year is how we get willing to let go of everything that thinks it might be more interesting over here, or it's prettier over there, or I might look better over there, and latch onto our cable and let it pull us to our niche in our place in the mosaic. And we can play with metaphors as long as we want and as far as we want. The cables, whatever. If that cable isn't, if something seems to be going wrong, okay, so what's going wrong with me? Am I really on, maybe there's another cable deeper down that really is the cable I need to be connecting with, or maybe there's one even deeper down. To get grounded and connected with that whose purpose is to flow us toward our place in the mosaic. And I'm about to, excuse me. So there it is. And that for me gives me hope. Primarily the hope is because I'm not in charge. And she's not in charge, and he's not in charge. And there are lots and lots of, there's something bigger than all of us in charge. Or in, obviously not entirely in control, but there's a movement towards something good, something positive, something which gives me hope. I read recently in one of the very old writings of 1,400 years ago or so about hope being the source of the energy. When we have hope, we have energy. And so that the thought that there is this force, this energy, this cable, drawing us all, but I'm interested in me, hopefully you're interested in you, drawing us personally, individually, uniquely toward our place within the Mosaic, that gives me hope, because I know that if I'm in charge, we're all in trouble. So I feel more confident there. I trust that because I see how it's been operational throughout time and history as far as we know it, and how it's come about. And so that gives me the energy to do this, to have Living Mosaic, to encourage Danielle and Living Spark, to help support the Spark of Humanity Network and the many facets of work it's doing. So that just having the hope that it's not, oh, they're out there, those people are going to, I have hope from sort of anything I can see with my mortal eyes. No, that's not it. Although it could be, but it's hope in that movement, that the power behind that movement and that development, the evolutionary force, the dynamic of becoming, that which moves towards fulfillment. So it's a big enough hope that I want to, and invite you to consider, participating in, joining, becoming part of, signing on to, and that surge, because my sense is, certainly it is because of who I read and who I see and who I talk to, that we are in a surge, in an Xsurge, and that this is, and so we can latch on and become part of it. And that's really good news for me. And I hope it's good news for you. And as I said last time, it's a matter of allowing ourselves to become aware and to see the sort of the breadcrumbs sprinkled throughout the wilderness in which we are traveling, saying, yeah, it's something is happening. And when I see it from this perspective, the long view, and realize that something's happening, yes, I would rather be participating in it, joining it, because that's where life is. Balking, denying, trying to make it go my way, these are all shades of death. They're all just, blocking it out, not participating, because this force can be called life as well as X. It can be called all sorts of things. So we can choose to do the work of letting go of everything that gets in the way of our joining that, and begin to experience life. We'll call it life rather than X, or life, X life, whatever. We can begin to experience that and feel it, because I talk to people who feel it. They feel it in some moments, I do too. Feel it in their whole selves, that, oh, here's the cable, let me latch on. It will draw me down to Fisherman's Wharf or wherever it'll take us. So it's, I invite you to join on, and I invite you to join us throughout this coming year, or join Danielle, me at the beginning, me maybe intermittently, but as we explore Living Spark to help us connect in with that cable, to become willing to participate in this surge, which is a great mystery, and therefore we can call X. So I'll be quiet and just beam happily until time is up. Thank you. And thank you, Orca. Thank you, Coleman. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris Cricket the dog, and all the Spark of Humanity folks.